Good morning, everybody. Of course, it is not morning yet. There was John Ferriola. He would say good morning and repeat until he got a response. So I will also repeat good morning. I hope you've had a good morning so far, and I hope it continues that way. It is a great pleasure for me to speak in front of such esteemed people, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I don't take too much of your time, and we're having some delays, so I will be picking up the pace. First of all, I would like to thank Erdemir for giving us the opportunity to participate in this event. And for the past 14 years, they have been maintaining this spectacular organization. So I would like to thank the Steel Orbits organization for inviting us to this event. Now, the air in the room is a bit dark after Mr. Veysel's speech, and I don't have much to lighten the mood, but instead I will now be talking about the current outlook of the situation and what we should be thinking about going forward. And I see that we have a lot of young people among the audience, and I hope that if I could inspire some questions in their minds by the end of the speech, then I will be happy. So, steel has a past of 150 years. And since the invention of the methods in England, we've been using steel. After the developments made by Siemens in Germany, and in time we've started using electricity to develop the alloys, and we have developed electric furnaces. And throughout these 150 years, we haven't seen that big of a change, really. Although we've come a long way in terms of quality and methodology, we're still using basically the same methods. But the point we're at currently is about the final stage in a way. So, going forward, the world is looking for something new, and the root cause for that is the picture that you see to your left. Now, we are questioning how respectful steel is to the environment and how responsible it is. There is a need for steel to prove itself. So there is a search globally. So we cannot think of a life without steel, but we get criticized. They say that what you're doing is dangerous, it's dirty, and it's questionable how much value you're creating. But unfortunately, they cannot think about how vital steel is. Now, if they can get to somewhere, if they can get to anywhere, it is because of steel. And we are trying to constantly emphasize then and again the importance of steel in our lives. We cannot think an alternative to it, which is why many countries attribute a special importance to the steel industry. They consider it to be a special industry among others. So, Dr. Yu, in his thanks speech, has mentioned something crucial, which I liked, and I would like to mention it. He said that they're saying that you're producing too much steel, you're producing half the steel the world uses, and they're complaining about this and that, but don't forget that the English did the same too, and then Americans got into it, and they also were producing half the steel the world uses. And there will come a day in the future, for example in 2050, the estimation is about 2.5 billion tons of steel to be produced. So what he's trying to say is that as countries developed, in the first stage, what they need first and foremost is steel. So they prioritize the steel industry. And as is the case in the Soviets or the Japanese. But for the past 20 years, the steel industry has gone through a serious structural change that has started in the 80s, the trend of globalization that favored the Chinese. But they have grown so large that their share in the global market has increased from 4% to 25%. And they are practically dominating the industry. And the other countries are slowly losing their competitive power, which is taking the world from globalization to regionalization in a sense. For example, Brexit, or for another example, the decline in the German steel industry and the threat of recession it implies for Europe, or the decline in demands due to the situation in Korea. And on top of that, the fact that we are seeing a decline in the demand domestically. These are not particularly encouraging for us, but despite everything, if we were to look closer, the Turkish steel industry has made a huge leap. It has become an industry that is self-sufficient in many fields, and it has become a global player. So I will come back to our criticizers that say your investments are too slow, you are not reactive enough in producing value, and I compare these criticisms to a man that is speaking very boldly after a mediocre performance. We have had many obstacles, and I think that overcoming these obstacles and coming to where we are today is a great feat. We haven't received a penny from the state while doing what we did, and this is somewhat unprecedented in the global stage. Now, this was mentioned before, but I've been quite interested in it for the past 3 to 4 months. This is an important agreement. One of them was signed in Europe. It's about the steel and coal agreement. And if you play by the rules dictated in the agreement, then you have the right to free trade. And you are a shareholder in the market. And they have been enjoying the benefits of that agreement for the past 20 years. And now I see that they're the players and we're the market. And we have opened them a market that used to be relatively close to many third world countries. And we have kept on our fight. So they've been saying that if there are any disputes against that we will sit down and talk about it. Or if one of the sides feels the need to protect themselves against the other, measures will be taken that will affect the other party in the least. But we see that we are not invited to the discussions, and we are not being looked out for in actuality. So it comes as a surprise that what's important to me is this. So you've had a surplus for the past 20 years, and then you're in the red for 1 year, and then you're causing an uproar. So this is quite interesting in a sense, that this is a reaction that is strange. Is this what we're worth to Europe? And I believe that currently we are seeing the decline in the value of being a European. So from now on, when we sit down and talk with Europeans, how credible what they say will be to us. For Americans, it's a similar situation. We've been exporting and trading with them for the past 30 years, and we have had many CVD cases, and they are not giving up. And since that didn't work, they started to look into other avenues of complaining with Bush, and now, fortunately, they have a president like Trump. He used to count 3 countries, China, Korea, and Turkey, that he hated the most. And they have made good use of this opportunity. And they released Section 232, using national security as a pretext. And the tax was increased to 50%, then it was decreased to 25%, and the World Trade Organization, during a meeting in Mexico, they're saying that if you exceed the limit, we'll increase it back to 50% again. So I ask you, what part of this has to do with national security? So what I'm trying to say is the approach that we're seeing has nothing to do with reality or rationality for that matter. But among all of these, I think what we should do is to sit down and examine and criticize ourselves. What did we do against all of this? What kind of a reaction we performed? And in the end, we have a population of 82 million, and we are a large country. Are we giving the appropriate response? If not, we need to. These 2 markets are crucial, and we've seen the numbers today. It has a potential about 12 million tons, but unfortunately, today we are only utilizing half of that. And in the future, it seems that we will have difficulties reaching even half of that. And this attitude of the states is slowly becoming widespread throughout the globe. They are trying to take similar measures, and what this means is that the market is shrinking around the globe, which makes competition difficult. So we need to reconsider. Another thing that I would like to mention, despite everything that happened, our state and our customers believe that we are strong. So, in doing so, they are trying to decrease the import taxes. So I thank them for that, ironically. Now, the supply chain is also gaining a new structure, and the steel industry needs to reevaluate itself, because there are regional disparities that are being formed slowly. Around the world, the amount that is being traded declined from 450 million tons to 430 million. And the share has decreased to about 26%. This means that the pie is shrinking, and when the pie shrinks, competition becomes more difficult. And unfortunately, we have competitors that are more advantageous than us. They have the state backing them up, they have the cost advantage, and we need to assess what our advantages are against these fierce competitors. We are a generation that grew up in many recessions, and I could safely say that I've seen many recessions in my 30 years of life, and we've been successful in managing each and every one of them. And this makes us, compared to others, more flexible, more efficient. And we need to make use of these advantages well. But unfortunately, being alone in this fight is something that prevents us from achieving the outcome that we want. There was a conference in Milano last week, and I was invited as well, and I'm glad I participated because when they see Turkey is absent, they start bad-mouthing Turkey in a sense. The second chairman of the Eurofair and talked about how difficult a time that the European steel industry going through, and he attributed this difficulty to Turkey. And he said that the measures that we've taken, it has not been enough to stop Turkey. So he suggested that they put additional taxes for Turkey. The Americans are increasing the taxes and saying national security. And others are targeting people that they've been in agreement for the past 20 years. And Canada is practically bending the rules of the World Trade Organization. So in this situation, how do we overcome this? I think what we should do, first and foremost, is to reply to these accusations. We need to bring this up with the World Trade Organization. And agreements should be brought to arbitration. So, because if there's a violation, we need to keep close track of it, and we need to look out for our rights. If we are to achieve anything in this new world, we need to defend our rights. This is a difficult time we're seeing, and it's not just for us, but for the all industries. There has been an increase in capacity around the world, but as Mr. Veysel mentioned, that is most related to Korea and China. The world has not reached the ideal capacity yet. The Spanish has not been able to reach their ideal utilization. The Japanese, the Germans, they have been able to reach levels about 90%. And what that means is the steel industry is a heavy industry that requires huge capital. It needs a huge capital to reevaluate itself. So in order to grow consistently, it needs to make a profit of about 15%. But let alone making profit, we are now looking into minimizing loss. So in such an environment, we can say that the steel industry's access to financial resources is becoming more and more difficult, which presents difficulties for the future. Now, as countries are adopting more and more populist policies, in such an environment, our job is going to become even harder. The Section 232 decision, although it has looked favorable, I believe that it won't be a solution for the long term. And the European steel industry is declining rapidly, and they are trying to circumvent that through agreements that I believe won't be long-standing. So Turkey needs to establish its position quite clearly. The role of steel in our lives, our responsibility for the people, these things should be assessed, and analysis and the trends for the future need to be analyzed. In the near future, or to be more precise, presently, the biggest issue in the steel industry is environment, and meaning carbon emissions. The global carbon emission, 8% of it is from the steel industry, and Turkey has implemented a carbon tax. along with many other companies, many other countries. So the price of 1 ton of carbon dioxide is about $20. And in 2040, it will reach 120. And in 2050, it will reach about $180, which will change the cost structure in the industry. So it will, so the material cost efficiency will be even more important. And we are already working on that, but what we need to do is to participate in the global discourse about these topics. So the European Steel Association has performed the research. They grouped companies into two groups, the groups A and B. And when they examined the companies that have basic oxygen furnitures, they have seen that they've been producing 1.8 tons of carbon dioxide. But the other group has oxygen emissions that is much less. So moving from that, the CO2 costs $100. And if you have a large disparity, then you will be paying a huge sum, which will increase in the future. The A group is has an emission about 400, while the other has 600. And we will see in the future that it should be our main priority to decrease the carbon emissions. Quality of the raw materials, the credibility of the process, efficiency are important factors in decreasing the carbon emissions. And carbon is slowly replacing hydrogen. For example, there is a pilot plant established in Germany, and I believe that it will take some time for that to be commercialized. But I believe that as the Turkish steel industry, we haven't been working on this topic, but we need to start soon. And we need to start working on the technical side of things, because it might be too late. And this isn't just about green steel. They've developed another term, which is responsible steel. Most users today, they are looking into where the material they're getting comes from and how responsibly it is manufactured. They're questioning these things. They're asking, where did it come from? How does it work? And the place where it's processed and produced, they're asking for certificates and credentials, and these need to be closely inspected, and we need to be ready. So in the zero carbon economy, steel is still an important material because it is flexible, it's durable, it's recyclable, and it practically has an unlimited lifespan. Another topic is job safety. One of the most important things in the world today is the safety of workers and the importance of human life. And we need to get together, cooperate, and look into how we can achieve the highest standards in work safety. And we need to get together with all of our competitors and our partners in the supply chain. And we need to cooperate in solving these issues, because our job is a difficult job. It is dirty, yes, that's true. And as we move forward, these factors decrease the attractiveness of the job among the educated youth. But we need to look into the ways of increasing the industry's attractiveness among the educated youth. Now, currently, the world is all about digitalization and artificial intelligence. They are using augmented reality. And when we're looking at how we could integrate our industry to the world, we need to look into ways of utilizing digitalization and augmented reality and artificial intelligence and such innovations. The automotive industry is transforming. Now we're talking about autonomous cars that are shared. And I believe that this will be of benefit. Currently in the world, there are not many people that have the privilege to be able to buy automobiles. And I believe that this will benefit the production of automobiles. But there are certain problems in that front as well. There are questions that need to be answered. For example, in 2050, 70% of the global population will be residing in cities, which is why the travel times are estimated to be about 25% longer. For each year, about 1 million people are losing their lives in traffic accidents. For example, have you ever thought about how much time a car spends while parking or while in transit? So let me tell you, 95% of the time, a car is parking, while on the other hand, we're talking about the steel industry and its carbon emissions, but cars and automobiles play a large role in pollution as well. In terms of its consumers, steel is still trustworthy, it's still flexible, it's still attractive in terms of cost, and it's recyclable. So today, 65% of an automobile's weight is comprised of steel. But in the future, when we transition to electric cars, people are using and looking into other materials such as aluminum to make the cars lighter. And the share of aluminum, which is about 14%, is estimated to increase to 25% in the future. And the plastic and composite materials will rise from 6% to 16%. So if steel stays the way it is expected to decline in the future. But in the future, if we build on what we have today, and if we decrease the weight, so in other words, if you make steel lighter and more durable, I believe that steel will be able to hold on to its share. Urbanization is another topic. The world is talking about smart cities. Google has signed an agreement in Montreal, and they will convert part of the city into a smart city. Another topic, something that has been foreseen for 2050, megacities. It's estimated that cities that have a population of over 50 million will reach over 30. These cities account for 75% of the carbon emissions. And the buildings in these cities account for the 40% of the emissions in the cities, and 40% of solid waste. So besides all of these things, architects are foreseeing that architectures will continue to develop vertically, because only then you can use your resources optimally. And this means that steel needs to transform to suit the needs of vertical architecture, and it needs to be more durable. So to that end, steel industries need to produce new products, increase the performance of their products, They need to work together with their consumers and users, and they need to be faster and more flexible. I'm sorry, I've been talking about many things in a short time, but for the past 30 years, we've had an outstanding performance. And if we want to maintain this performance, we need to start racking our brains from now on. Because I believe that the key word in our era is sustainability. And it has to do with economic sustainability, social and environmental sustainability. The steel industry has been going through a serious transformation in the past 20 years. But in the future, if we are to maintain a similar performance, there are things that we must do. And that is stop competing and stop sabotaging one another and start working together. It is estimated that the demand will increase by 1.2, which means an increase in consumption about 1.8 million tons. And it seems that this will affect China and India mostly. There is not a large estimation of an increase in demand in our region. Now, in such an environment, the biggest risk is the political uncertainties, especially with leaders such as Trump, Netanyahu, Putin, or Boris Johnson. It is very hard to work with these leaders. So I hope you have a good time of it, and I thank you for listening to my speech. I wish you a happy conference.
Thank you very much to Uğur Bey for the speech that he has already delivered. While he was giving a speech, something just popped up in my mind in 2013 in the conference that we held. And Uğur Bey was a speaker as well. And the risk of protectionism was emerging. And I asked what he was thinking about that. In the global sense. So, and he replied me back that it was going to be the giant problem in the steel industry. That's why thank you very much for the valuable speech that he has already made to the audience. Any questions that can be directed to Mr. Uğur Bey? So I will have two different questions to Uğur Bey. After the Veysel Bey speech, Murat Bey asked a question regarding the carbon. You refer the steps that it has taken, and Veysel Bey has given an answer, such an interesting answer. I mean, he didn't answer the question very clearly. And the other issue is not that important for us. Because he said that it is a subject that has been developed by the European Union. So, but in your speech, maybe 1/3 of your speech, you have spared your time as if you support this as well. So I just said that it was something that should be done, and so the foreigner and the foreign journalists are also keeping track of this conference, so we have to be very clear. So the first thing that one of you is the General Secretary of a very important association, and the other one is the General. Which of the views which has already been pronounced over here is the valid views? So which one do you think that we have to stick? So you have already given a chance for Veysel Bey to make a clarification. So the subject that the Veysel Bey has already told was the measures that are going to be taken by the European Union. Anyway, we can just leave this issue to Veysel Bey around 2 to 3 years later. I mean, we are not going to be able to defend our rights against China and the other countries. So, I mean, that's why I believe that this is an important issue to be touched upon. Yes. So the perception of the explanation that I made is being done this way. So I have used I was just questioning if there were some other things that can be taken into consideration other than the carbon and the European countries and in the Turkey. So it's been 22 years that I've been involved in the Turkish steel industry, and for all along the 22 years, so you were not able to pass through Aliyah because there were a lot of trouble deriving from the system. So I mean, you are you cannot notice that you are passing through this way. And there is a report which was produced by the Undersecretariat. I mean, in the report, it proves that, I mean, in terms of emission, Turkey is the good market. I mean, this is an artificial agenda. So I just didn't want to talk about that. Regarding the carbon, regarding social aspects, can be something to be talked, because there is a level of salary. I mean, this salaries can be a little bit low here in Turkey, but when you take it into consideration in comparison to the buying power of the Turkish citizens, I mean, it can be justified that the salaries which are allocated to the laborers in Turkey as sufficient enough. So I have never heard that, especially the players in the industry has got any complaints about why we are unable to reach that level. And we are working in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment in a very good harmony. So the Europeans want us to stick with these rules. So do you think that it's something wrong to deal with it, and it's against what we believe? So I mean, in a restricted way and a certain way, it can be applied, but because we witness that there is a tendency to apply this application in a subjective way, and as if they are abusing. I believe that a wall should be built up. If it is not enough, then this should be applied. And if it is not applicable, then the other one should be applied. I mean, I believe that in any case, we have to be protected. And manufacturing of those European countries, steel manufacturing, in the crisis of 2011, $200,000 should be allocated. So I mean, he said that it was either for or against to be accepting the mandatism. So which instrument is available, and all the instruments available in the agenda should be used. I mean, in the sense, and frankly, in terms of emission, I mean, do you think that is possible in when it is talk about in this context? So today, none of us. For example, no one today in Turkey don't want to accept the smoke which is coming out of the chimney in a restaurant next to their homes. You see, the European steel industry today is really at the back of the Turkish steel industry, because the industry in Turkey is younger than the industry in those European countries. And in Europe, there the regulation which are discussed in Europe should be also discussed over here in Turkey as well. Carbon license cost is about 100 million euros. So in the future, the people in the European countries are going to be complaining about what the people who are producing and involving in the same industry are not paying this amount of money as we do. That's why we have to be very sensitive about the things that we are having over here in this industry. So thank you very much. So I'm not going to be asking a second question because we have already been over delayed. I'm coming from Albania. While keeping track of you and listening your speech, the questions crisis are around the last 30 years and having no incentives in the steel industry and iron industry, and international taxes being really very high. So these are the main issues that we are having. And beside this, there is a reality in Turkey. Their crude materials are generally imported from the other countries abroad, and for example, the scrap are used at a very high price, and electricity and natural gas are all imported from the other countries, and the rebars and hot plates are the ones who are sold and exported to the other countries over here. These two products in the world everywhere can be manufactured, and they are the products which are very much and highly in demand. And other than these issues, because this can be connotated with the political issues as well as sectoral players. So the players in the industry have any projections for the futures? Do you have any solutions? Of course we have. For about 20 years, we haven't demanded any penny, in return to the investment that we've done so far. So a facility like Erdemir, building up it, I'm just talking about the facility located in the north. It's about $6 or $7 billion. So when you look at where the investment has been done, we see China. Who did that investment in China? The state made it, you see. So, of course, especially in the period that I have witnessed, is completely different. So, and the other issue, so I believe that the Turkish steel industry is doing more than what it is expected to do. So the things that we are producing is the material, but the value is added up. For example, if you turn and transform the material into automotive or machinery, like dishwasher or something, so you can add the value in that point. We just produce the material, and that is something to do with the scale. Around 2 months ago, so we have already rolled hot-rolled steel. It was around 300,000 tons. In the coming February or March, we are going to do the casting, the first casting in Turkey, because this stainless steel has just reached up to a reasonable level. And the same way, if you do not find any scale, then you have to do your own. For example, IF Steel says that they are using the French steel to Renault. So this So what we should do is just how we can transform these foreign perceptions into Turkish still perception. So can I get the microphone, please, to this side? So let me say something as a Çolakoğlu Metalurji. It's been 33 years that I've been involved in. In the past 29th of October, I received a very interesting mail. And he said that I think you have owned the company working over there. So the first casting has been just done in 1953. So now we are having turn of 50 years or Yilmaz. I'm from the point that you have come up to so the Turkish steel and iron industry. So I am going to make a critics as well. So, for example, I'm talking about so we have never touched upon the issues of our R&D, research and development. So we are talking about the environment a lot, but the R&D is also an important issue to be focused on, talk and discuss about. And I still say that I wish around 20 years ago we had to focus on the research and development as well. We are talking about value-added products, energy efficiency, and so on. So we were not able to do this all, you see. So, for example, we don't have any institutes such as POSCO Institute. So when we go back and look at the universities that we have been all graduated from, so for example, there is no cooperation between industry and the universities as well. So. And I see the research, the ones who are involved in the research and R&D, but I don't think that they are doing the research and development in its real context and value. So because research and development requires to spend great deal of money, and it requires to be incentivized as well. So I think these are something that we were unable to do and realize that. So I mean, in our culture, there is a handicapped on the fact that working in cooperation with each other. So when we look at the R&D studies are really very expensive study. Especially the examples that we see abroad, that they have all been realized just holding hand by hand, you see. So, I mean, we have to try to do something holding hand in hand, you see. You know that as if the facilities that each one of us have is like a space base, you see, and we are trying to be hiding whatever we are doing in our facilities from the other competitors, you see. So I mean, the things that we are going to be committing is something that should be done just holding hand in hand, you see. That's why I mean we have to sit down and put our thoughts on this. That's why we've got some opportunity, and if we are able to support them and work there together. So please go on, Hussein Bey. I think you're going to say something. Hussein Soykan. My name is Uğur Bey. So you have already drawn a general vision in your speech. This is an important point, I believe. And so you have also said that the unfair applications abroad against Turkey should be also replied back. So there is, how are we going to be forming a minimum mutual benefits in the domestic market? So, I mean, after listening the presentation of the each steel industrialist, I'm getting confused. You see, my mind gets confused. So there should be a list of minimum applications in the domestic market, I think. So let's start from some point. You see, what I propose you is this. As I said, so the priorities in our company is this: the occupational safety, environment second, and the productions of the steel comes third. So the occupational safety is really very important that we have to focus on, and it's something that we have to sort it out. That's why we have to put all our efforts to sort those problems out. So, I mean, we have to also fulfill our responsibilities towards our labors. So we've got a common past, what you're saying. So we have realized the venture capital, an institution called Ventures. So that proves that this is something to be achieved, you see, and only if you got the intention to do so. So I think we have our time. So, you said in your speech that you have to make the steel industry very attractive for the youngsters. So, do you think that this is working in the steel industry will be offering an opportunity for the youngsters? I mean, in the steel industry, leave the Turkey aside. So if you ask me if there is something has already been done in concretely, I don't have any answer to this. But as I told you, the competition beyond this, so I don't think that having a cheap and inexpensive labor ship is not going to be regarded as an advantage. So among the engineers, when we are just evaluating the CVs as well. So we have just left the OT, Bosphorus University, and etc., because they're not coming to our industry. So we need the educated people in our industry. So, I mean, in order to reach to the levels that we desire to reach, is deriving from employing a very well-educated people in working in this industry. So, artificial intelligence is really far more important than the other things. So they say that there is God's hand in the furnace. Whatever you do, you don't have the opportunity to drag the things into a way that you would like to do, you see. That's why the managing of those things, that's why is important, and artificial intelligence is the major thing over here in this